So thank you for taking time out of your evening. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Mary Carmen. I serve as the president of Knights for Life. So this event is being co-hosted by Knights for Life and the Catholic Medical Association on campus. And we just want to welcome you and thank you for your participation, for being here this evening. So let's go ahead, and with all good things, we're going to bow our head and begin in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Good and gracious Father, you are so good. Lord, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for having created us. Tonight, as we gather, we pray most especially for the survivors of sexual assault. We pray for their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. Lord, you are their caretaker. We just ask that you provide healing for these people. We pray most especially for all of our medical personnel, doctors, nurses, counselors, psychologists, therapists. Bless their words and bless their hands. And finally, we pray for all mothers. We pray for their health, especially mothers who have conceived, for the health of their child in the womb. And Lord, just give our society the means to help these women and to meet them where they're at, to provide as much service and love and compassion as we can so that we can ensure their safety, their security, their health, and their well-being for them and their child. We pray for all of our speakers this evening, for all of the members in our audience. We just listen with an open heart, an open mind. We ask all this in your name. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Before I hand it over, I just want to reiterate for those coming in, you may find a seat. We've got brochures. Everybody should have a brochure and a note card. If you don't have one, we've got extras. Go ahead and pick it up from a seat if you can't. If we run out of seating here, we've placed chairs along the aisle that are socially distant, so feel free to take a seat there as well. And I'm going to pass it off to Miss Emily Taylor, our incoming president for next year. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hi, everyone. I just want to welcome you all. Thank you so much for coming. Like Mary Carmen said, my name is Emily Taylor, and I'm currently the treasurer of Knights for Life. I just want to start off by saying that Knights for Life cares deeply about sexual assault survivors. Sexual assault and rape culture are great issues in our society. Nearly 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men will experience some kind of sexual assault in their lifetime. This is a huge problem. Those are big numbers, and it is something that we must keep fighting against. It's our job to advocate and promote justice for these survivors, and it's also important to educate others on how we can end sexual assault and help survivors of sexual assault. We will be discussing some very difficult topics tonight, so we just want to let you guys know if at any time you feel like you need to leave or step out of the room, please feel free to do so. Again, thank you so much for coming, and I hope that we can all learn something from each other tonight.
As Emily mentioned, sexual assault awareness is an important month for discussing these sensitive and difficult issues. The injustice of sexual violence continues to plague our culture and our society. And so in addition to focusing on prevention and solutions and treatment to sexual violence, Sexual Assault Awareness Month also incorporates organizations and resources that help address the consequences of sexual assault, especially healing for those survivors. So whether that be their physical health, their emotional health, their mental health, this month is addressed as well to let them know that they're not alone and that there are places that care for their well-being. We as Knights for Life recognize that a consequence of sexual assault can be pregnancy. So there are women who can and do conceive when they've been sexually assaulted. And so how do we, as members of Marion community, as members of the greater Indianapolis community, how do we compassionately walk with those survivors in such a difficult circumstance? What do we have to offer them when we come across someone who's been sexually assaulted and has now conceived and is with child? So that's really the purpose of this event. It wants to address that How can we compassionately walk alongside those people? Our organization's sole purpose is to help women who are facing a difficult situation of unwanted pregnancy. So Knights for Life exists to eradicate the stigma that often comes with an unplanned pregnancy, right? We exist to eradicate the pressure that forces so many young women into having an abortion. Knights for Life cares deeply about survivors of sexual assault, and this event focuses specifically on the issue of pregnancy resulting from rape, because we understand that though it might be a few number of women that conceive, those women still have dignity, and their child still has dignity. And so we want to address this that's often pushed under the rug. So I just wanted to, again, introduce myself, our club. We're so thankful for you to be here. Finally, we're going to have Audrey Wilcox, our current vice president, come up and just explain the format of tonight, and we'll get going. All right.
All right, so yes, I'm Audrey Wilcox, and I am serving as the Vice President of Knights for Life this year. Tonight, we are going to be hearing from several amazing speakers. The first is Dr. Donna Harrison, CEO of the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. The second is Julia DeLuce, who will offer her own perspective as a survivor of rape. Next, we will hear from one of our own officers, Sarah Rell, who will speak about the resources that Marion and Knights for Life in particular have to help survivors of sexual assault and pregnant women in general. Our final two speakers are representatives from the Hope Center and the O'Connor House, wonderful organizations that strive to help women in crisis pregnancies. To conclude tonight's event, we will have a discussion panel where the audience will have the opportunity to ask questions of the experts. You all should have a note card at your desk. Let me see those note cards. Wonderful. If you don't have one, feel free to split that with someone around you. So you should all have a note card at your seat that you can write questions as they come to mind. We recognize that sexual assault is a prevalent injustice in the lives of women and men. We understand that this is a sensitive subject for many people. So again, if any time you feel the need to leave the room, please feel free to do so. Additionally, we have a faculty member of Marion's Counseling and Consultation Services here available to meet with individuals if need be. And with that, we are ready to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's so great to see the room so full. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Caroline Kernan. I'm a first-year medical student here, and I also serve as the Vice President of the Catholic Medical Association at Marion. And I also kind of serve as the liaison between Knights for Life and CMA. And it's been such a great honor to work with them and to co-host this event. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll introduce Dr. Donna Harrison. She is a physician board certified in obstetrics and gynecology. She is currently serving as the executive director of the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which is the largest non-sectarian pro-life physician organization in the world, with over 7,000 members across the United States and associate members on every continent. Under her leadership, ABLOG has doubled membership, launched the annual Matthew Bolfin Educational Conference, developed an up-to-date website and social media presence, and launched systematic outreaches to the medical, legal, and policy communities to discuss the effects of abortion on women. Dr. Harrison's research interests include selective progesterone receptor modulators, endometrial contraception, maternal mortality, and abortion mortality and morbidity. She has authored peer-reviewed papers on the approval of RU486 and on Ella, as well as on the embryocidal potential of hormonal contraception. Dr. Harrison is a continuing medical education speaker in the United States and internationally on topics of medical abortion with mifepristone and misoprostol, adverse events associated with these drugs, emergency contraception with Ella, maternal mortality, and abortion morbidity. She is an adjunct professor at Trinity International University in Deerfield, Illinois, teaching postgraduate seminars at the annual Center for Bioethics and Human Dignity summer workshops. She is associate editor of the peer-reviewed medical journal, Issues in Law and Medicine. Dr. Harrison is married to Dr. Mark Harrison and is the mother of 5 children and 5 grandchildren. Please give our keynote speaker your warmest welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm honored to be here. The topic that you guys are attempting to cover is worthy of a whole year's worth of lectures. And I'm not going to cover anywhere near that in 20 minutes. But I am going to take one select portion of the issue of what do you do with survivors of rape? How do you react to them? And we're going to focus on the issue of rape survivors and pregnancy. And just want to make sure I can get my slides going here.
Let me see.
Yep, it's got to get the little cursor on there. There we go. Okay. First of all, I want to say rape is a horrific violation of the most deeply held core part of a human being, both men and women. It should never be tolerated. It should never be tolerated. Approximately 70% of rape or sexual assault victims experience moderate to severe distress, psychological distress, and that's a larger percent than for any other violent crime. People who have been sexually assaulted are more likely to use drugs than the general public. 3.4 times more likely to use marijuana, 6 times more likely to use cocaine, 10 times more likely to use other major drugs. They're self-treating deep psychological distress. The likelihood that a person suffers suicidal or depressive thoughts increases after sexual violence. 94% of women who are raped experience symptoms of PTSD during the 2 weeks following the rape, and 30% of women report PTSD symptoms up to 9 months after the rape. This is not a easily forgotten or easily healed violation of human dignity. A human who has been raped has had all control of their person ripped away. The person raped needs immediate medical care and a safe environment to heal, those 2 things. That person also needs to be empowered. And one of the ways we empower people is to give them accurate information. So she needs to be empowered with accurate medical information in order to begin to understand her particular situation and become empowered to make decisions again. A woman who has been raped can become pregnant. In fact, the chances of pregnancy from any single act of intercourse depend on her individual circumstances, including where she is at in her monthly cycle, whether she is using contraception at the time of the rape, and her baseline fertility. There has not been a lot of study on women who have been raped who become pregnant. I will review the 2 papers that are substantial, but this is an area, if any of you feel called to do research, that we could use a whole lot more research on. The estimate from one of these studies is an estimate of 5%. There's another study that gives an estimate of about 8% chances of conception after rape. But this means about 30,000 pregnancies each year in this country, if we estimate. What do we know about rape survivors who become pregnant after rape? Like I said, there's not a lot of study. And what can we do to help the rape survivor who becomes pregnant after rape? Both of those topics, like I said, could easily fill an hour lecture. So what I'm going to do tonight is a very high fly over a very deep subject. There are 2 studies which I'm going to review. One is a recent study from 2019 by Gilbert, and one's a 1996 study by Holmes, who everybody quotes in the rape survival and pregnancy literature. First, we're going to do Holmes. This was a national rape-related pregnancy survey. What they found was that the rape-related pregnancy rate was 5% per rape among victims of reproductive age. But remember, more than just reproductive age women get raped. So this is limiting that sample to those who are capable of conceiving. Among adult women, an estimated 32,000 pregnancies result from rape each year. Among the 34 cases of rape-related pregnancy that were reviewed in this particular paper, the majority occurred among adolescents and resulted from an assault by a known and often related perpetrator. Why would that be? Well, many adult women are on contraception already, so a single act of intercourse would be less likely than an adolescent who is not on contraception, who was not otherwise sexually active. Only 11.7% of these victims received immediate medical attention. That's horrific. 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 received medical attention, and half received no medical attention at all related to the rape. Why would that be? Fear, stigma, fear of what the medical professionals might say or think. This is a horrific statistic, and this should change in our lifetime. A total of 1 out of 3, or 32% of these victims, did not discover they were pregnant until they had already entered the second trimester. This becomes a very significant factor when we talk about what are the consequences and what are the choices open to a woman who finds out that she's pregnant as a result or after rape. Of those women who discovered they were pregnant after rape, half of them, that's the second bullet point there, underwent elective abortion. Half did not. 32% opted to keep the infant, 5.9% placed the infant for adoption, and 11.8% had a spontaneous miscarriage. The statistics from Gilbert, this is a recent study done by looking at girls and women who are victims of rape during the post-armed conflict in Congo. 1,282 victims were assessed. There were 106 post-rape pregnancies, of which roughly half, 54.7%, ended in abortion, 14.2% in miscarriage, and 31% in childbirth, roughly similar to the statistics we saw from Holmes. So that's about most of what we know about the hard statistics after rape. Two studies in decades. It's an area that needs more study. But there have been a few studies looking at women's attitudes. And one of those was by Pruitt in 2009. And he commented that medical practitioners often assume that women never have any interest in carrying the baby to term after a rape. And so he was talking to people who had been raped. Should pregnancy result from rape, many physicians suggest abortion as the only alternative. I want to go back to that previous slide. In one case, after treating a raped woman, a physician told his patient what to do if her period didn't come. Namely, she needed to make an appointment at the abortion clinic. Another woman pregnant from rape stated that her doctor advised her to have an abortion. And a third who sought assistance from a rape crisis clinic stated that there was no alternative from the clinic. They offered to pay for the abortion. Even a doctor in the field stated, "We advise all rape victims that if they miss their next regular period by more than 1 week, they should return for menstrual extraction or suction curettage." Menstrual extraction, by the way, is just a euphemism for saying don't get a pregnancy test, just do a D&C. What can we do to help these women who have been raped and find they're pregnant? Don't assume. Don't assume that you know what that woman is going to choose to do with her pregnancy. One mom who had been raped said to me, "This is my child too. To paternalistically assume automatically that I would want to abort my child was to disempower me all over again." And remember, key for the rape victim is that they have been disempowered. They have lost agency and they've lost control. And if we continue to make decisions for them, they will continue to be disempowered. So one thing that you do need to do is you need to empower these women to be able to make an informed choice. Only approximately half of the women who have conceived after rape will choose to abort their child. Many women, especially adult women, may be already in a committed sexual relationship entirely separate from the abortionist. So pregnancies diagnosed after rape may have arisen from a different and consensual partner. What if she carries this baby to term? Will she resent this baby forever? Again, this is another area that we should have the answer to, and we don't. The most recent paper that I could find was Mackhorn from 1979. Of those women who carried their pregnancy after rape, only 14.7% agreed with the statement that the pregnancy, quote, served as a continual reminder of the rape. That's a significant percent, but it's certainly not all women. 85.7% of women who carried their pregnancy after rape did not agree with that statement. Less than 1 in 5 women who decided to carry a baby to term after rape expressed the need to confront feelings of resentment to the pregnancy or hostility toward the child. A significant number, 1 out of 5, 20%. But it's not all women. 68.75% of the women who gave birth either had, quote, a positive viewpoint to begin with toward the child, not toward the rape, toward the child, or changed through the course of their pregnancies from negative to more positive images, attitudes, beliefs, or feelings about the unborn child. None of the women who were raped and pregnant and brought to term changed from a positive to a more negative image or attitude about the unborn child after birth. An old study, but a significant study, to show that you cannot assume what that woman will feel toward her child. The person making the decision about whether or not to abort her preborn child needs to be empowered with accurate information. She needs to know exactly how far along she is in her pregnancy. This is important for dating conception. It's also important for knowing what her risks are. If she's in another sexual relationship, she needs to know who is the father of this preborn child. We can find out that information. We have non-invasive prenatal testing. And she needs to know what the consequences are of aborting her baby versus carrying that baby to term. So we're going to segue a little bit because the risks of elective abortion are downplayed or thought to be non-existent. Best thing since sliced bread. Pop a pill, poof, it's over. That is not the medical reality of abortion. There are immediate risks. There are risks of hemorrhage, infection, damage to the womb. And if the medical abortion, it's a long and painful process. The bleeding can last on average 2 weeks. And she may be able to recognize the unborn child that she passes, often by herself, often alone. And that in and of itself, looking at the image of your baby, is a trauma. Long-term risks, preterm birth, 162 studies over 6 decades have shown that abortion increases a woman's risk of preterm birth and subsequent pregnancies. And we'll go through some of those studies. There's also an increased risk of suicide, drug abuse, major depression requiring hospitalization, and other risks. Each of these topics in and of themselves are an hour lecture. So again, this is a high fly. I want to talk though about immediate complications. This is one of the best studies. It's from 2009 from Finland. In Finland, they own your medical records, so there's no such thing as somebody being lost to the record. At 42,000 abortions, half were medical, half were surgical. Overall, medical abortion, that is abortion with mifeprex and mifepristone, the drug-induced abortion, had a 1 out of 5 complication rate. Surgical abortion, about a 1 out of 20. Hemorrhage, the risk of hemorrhage was 15%, 1 out of 6, versus surgical abortion, 2%, 1 out of 50. The risk of incomplete abortion with tissue left inside, medical abortion, 6.7%, surgical, 1.6. Need for surgical reevacuation, again, about 6% versus surgical, 2%. And operative injuries. How in the world could you get an operative injury from a medical abortion? Well, if you're hemorrhaging after your medical abortion, then the DNC that has to be done under emergency circumstances. And that's a lot less safe than a surgery performed under controlled circumstances. Can you die from abortion? This is Center for Disease Control data from 2004. And what it showed is the death rate from legal induced abortion versus the gestational age of the baby. So you can see at 8 weeks, a surgical abortion does not have a great amount of mortality. But as you pass into the second trimester, the gestational age, we'll call second trimester 13 to 14 weeks. As you pass into that, the risk of death, not just complications, but death from surgical abortion goes up. And at about 22 weeks, the risk of death from surgical abortion itself passes the risk of death from live birth mortality. So at about the time that the baby is viable, capable possibly of surviving outside the womb, the woman's risk of death goes up and crosses her risk of death from live birth. Let's dive into long-term complications, and I'm just going to hit preterm birth and psychological complications lightly. This was a report from 2006 by the Institute of Medicine. Preterm birth causes, consequences, and prevention. I think it's like a 200-page document. The only place that they mention abortion is hidden in the text, okay? And what they say is, after looking at stress, socioeconomic factors, smoking, drug use, everything else, what they say is, unfortunately, many of the better established and more predictive risk factors for preterm birth are immutable, unchangeable in the current pregnancy, or because of our present state of knowledge, pose challenges for prevention or effective intervention. These risk factors are detailed in Table B5 and include those that predate the pregnancy: previous low birth weight or preterm delivery, multiple second trimester abortions, maternal stature, history of infertility. But I want to take a look at Table B5. These are immutable, that is, unchangeable medical risk factors associated with preterm birth: previous low birth weight or preterm delivery. So if you've had preterm delivery before, you're more likely to have preterm delivery in a subsequent pregnancy. Multiple second trimester spontaneous abortions, and prior first trimester induced abortion. Because if you have a first trimester induced abortion, you're more likely to have second trimester spontaneous abortions. And if you have second trimester spontaneous abortions, you're more likely to have a low birth weight or preterm delivery of a baby that survives. So we have known, like I said, 162 studies over 60 years. This is settled science. This is a very comprehensive systematic review and meta-analysis in the British Journal of OB-GYN a few years back, which looked at all the studies in the literature about abortion and preterm birth. And they said one abortion results in a 36% increased risk of preterm birth in a subsequent pregnancy. 2 abortions resulted in a 93% increased risk of preterm birth. Their conclusions was a previous ITOP, which is induced termination of pregnancy, is associated with a significantly increased risk of low birth weight and preterm birth, but not small for gestational age. The risk increases as the number of abortions, induced termination of pregnancies, increase. This isn't something that you hear from National Academy of Sciences, but it is the facts. We're going to go on to abortion and mental health. There was a pregnancy-associated deaths in Finland study, 1987 to 94, which looked at the records of what women died of in Finland, reproductive age women died of in Finland. And what they found, they stumbled on this accidentally, was that of women ages 15 to 45 that died, when you segregate them out by pregnancy outcome, no pregnancy, birth, miscarriage, or abortion, what you see when you use no pregnancy, deaths by suicide here, no pregnancy, they use that as their kind of their unit of measurement. Those women who gave birth were less likely to die from suicide. Those who miscarried were slightly more likely to die. And those who were aborted were very much more likely to die from suicide. Suicide being a marker of major depression. When I first saw that study, I didn't believe it actually. But this particular breakdown is what convinced me that this is true. Why? Because this is suicides per 100,000 women, and this is months after pregnancy outcome. I've had perinatal loss myself. I know what anniversary reaction is like. And if this were real, one would expect anniversary reaction. And when you break out the dates of the suicide months after pregnancy outcome, what you see is that women commit suicide frequently right after the baby dies, okay? Or they commit suicide when the baby would have been born. So this top line is abortion. This line is miscarriage. Again, you would expect that. If this were real, you would expect an anniversary reaction. You don't have that much anniversary reaction after birth. The Finland study went on to say, interview-based studies have consistently shown extraordinarily high levels of suicidal ideation, 30 to 55%, and reports of suicide attempts, 7 to 30%, 1 out of 3, among women who have had an abortion. In many of these studies, the women interviewed have explicitly described the abortion as the cause of the suicidal impulse. But you say, well, this is all comers. And you would expect that women who have births are in a better situation than women who have abortions. So you'd expect they'd do better. This is a study by Dr. David Ferguson. He's dead now. He was personally pro-choice and an excellent psychiatric researcher. And he said, the real question is, what happens to the mental health of women who carry unwanted or unplanned pregnancies to term, of which the subset of women who are raped falls into this subset. I wish we had this kind of granular data on women who are raped, but we don't. So this is a subset of all women who carry unwanted or unplanned pregnancies. He said, compared to women who carry unintended pregnancies to term, women who abort unintended pregnancies have a 28% higher risk of anxiety disorders, 134% higher risk of alcohol abuse, a 291% higher risk of illegal drug abuse, a 69% higher risk of suicide. His conclusions? There is no available evidence to suggest that abortion has therapeutic effects in reducing the mental health risk of unwanted or unintended pregnancy. In fact, there is suggestive evidence that abortion may be associated with small to moderate increases in the risks of some mental health problems. That's a very significant study when you consider that according to these organizations, these two are abortion textbooks. This is the APA Task Force on Mental Health and Abortion. They all three agree that past or present sexual, physical, or emotional abuse is an independent risk factor for adverse psychological outcome after abortion. So in the subset of women who have experienced physical abuse, of which rape has got to be the most violent physical sexual abuse, that is an independent risk factor. If they have an abortion, that's an independent risk factor for an adverse mental health outcome. So I'm going to summarize since my time is up. Rape is a horrific trauma. Rape survivors need to be empowered to make decisions about their life. Don't assume that you know what a rape survivor will choose to do with her pregnancy. Half will choose to abort. Statistically, half will not. Pregnant rape survivors need to be empowered, and denying accurate information to any woman is not empowering. They need accurate information about the gestational age of their baby. They need accurate information about the short and long-term risks of both childbearing and abortion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Thank you for providing the facts for us, and especially thank you for encouraging us to empower women to make an informed choice. Everyone, let's give a hand to Dr. Harrison. Now we would like to welcome our next speaker, Julia DeLuce. Julia currently serves as the Florida Regional Coordinator for Students for Life of America, the largest pro-life student organization in the world. Her work includes training students in Florida on all aspects of the life issue, speaking at rallies, leading lobbying efforts of Students for Life Action, and much more. She is a survivor of rape and offers a crucial perspective when discussing an issue that often falls in the abstract. Most importantly, her story challenges the societal assumption that women in her situation would choose abortion. Please welcome our next guest speaker, Julia DeLuce.
Thank you, Marian University and Knights for Life, for having me in that wonderful introduction. If you are not familiar, Students for Life is the largest pro-life youth organization. We have over 1,200 chapters. We're in all 50 states. And as a regional coordinator, it's my job to provide chapters of Students for Life with everything that they could need to be the most successful and in their stand for life on college campuses. And Knights for Life is a chapter of Students for Life. So, of course, when my colleague Emily, your regional coordinator, asked me to participate and offer my perspective and share my personal experience with sexual assault, I jumped at the opportunity to shine a light on this very necessary topic. And I do want to commend your chapter for tackling such a difficult topic in such a dire time and a crucial time as this, and to just show your care and the compassion that exists within your campus and also within the pro-life community for those that have experienced the trauma of sexual assault. So, when I was 16, I was brutally raped by someone that I was on a date with. And during that time in my life, I couldn't process what had happened to me. So I snuck back into my friend's house. I learned these details later, but I snuck back into my friend's house through her window and promptly showered and was one of the 9 out of 10 people that Dr. Harrison mentioned that did not receive immediate medical attention when I was raped. This was my first sexual experience, and I carried a lot of guilt and shame. I blamed myself for what had happened to me, and because of the lack of awareness of the issue at the time when I was in high school, I'm 22 now, so we've gotten a lot better in just a short period of time in how we address this issue. And I'm so grateful for that, because I hope that 16-year-olds now know that they should go and get immediate medical attention when facing a sexual assault, as I did. But I blamed myself. I told myself that because I went on that date, because I snuck out of my friend's house, because I didn't tell my parents where I was going, I put myself in a situation that I shouldn't have been in. And it was my fault. And I was dumb and stupid, and I didn't deserve the help that I knew on some level that I needed. And so I shoved the memory of what happened to me as far down as possible. And if you were to ask me at 17, 18, and well into my 19 years of age, if I had been sexually assaulted, I would have said no, because I had distanced myself so well from the trauma that I experienced. So what helped me to realize what truly had happened to me and what caused the blackout memories to come flooding back was actually the community provided by the pro-life movement. You see, I found my chapter of Students for Life and was actively a member, and we had formed a girls' Bible study together. And through the Bible study, I was able to relinquish the hold that my brain had and these walls that my brain had built up around these memories, and things that were fuzzy about that night came flooding back. So that meant at 19 years old, 3 years after I had been raped, I was fully able to process what had happened to me, and it hit like a wave of trauma. It hit as if it had just happened to me. I became severely depressed. My hair started falling out. My health crashed completely. I couldn't bring myself to go to class. And it was the pro-life community on my campus that quite literally busted through my bedroom door. I was living at a campus ministry house at the time, to throw me in the shower, to force feed me some mac and cheese, and to get me into professional counseling offices, and to get me to tell my pastor, who then helped me tell my parents. And then I was able to get professional help from licensed professionals that could walk me through why I was able to suppress that memory so well, and why I was experiencing this PTSD response 3 years after the fact, as if it had just happened the day before. Because of the pro-life movement, because of the love, care, and support of the community that Students for Life created on my campus, I was able to acknowledge what happened to me. I was able to get professional help and find healing. I was able to find my voice again, and I was able to find my calling. And I attribute all of that to the love and grace that exists in the pro-life movement. So if any of you happen to follow me on Instagram, Julia Fights for Life, shameless plug, you'll notice that what truly boils my blood, and I talk about this very often, is the alternative view, being those that are for legal abortion, that in my very strongly picked words, I would say, exploit the stories of those who have survived rape to justify the murder of innocent children. This has always irked me, but especially in most recent years, because you are making, as Dr. Harrison said, a very strong assumption as to what the women will do if they conceive. I can honestly say that I found healing when I was able to admit that what happened to me was not my fault. I was able to relinquish the guilt and the shame of the assault because I was able to truthfully admit to myself that the actions that I had taken, I could take responsibility for, but the actions of a man having sex with me without my permission and being violent towards me was not my fault. And because I was able to admit that, I was able to find healing. If I had conceived because of that interaction and then chose abortion, I would not have been able to find the same level of healing, because I would not have had to, or would not have had the ability to admit that my choices were not my fault, or the situation that transpired was not my fault, because what we choose to do after an assault is our responsibility. Ultimately, it was my responsibility to be truthful to myself, to be truthful to the pro-life community that was willing and ready to help me find professional help. And then it was my duty to show up and do the work that it took to heal and to step into my voice in the pro-life movement. So speaking as a survivor of a very violent rape at 16, I can firmly say that it is wrong to assume the choices that someone would make in that situation simply because you're trying to illustrate that abortion is a compassionate option and that it's a tool to help a woman heal from what happened to her. If anything, the people that I have met that have been conceived through rape and or were raped themselves through support groups that I've been a part of and conceived a child, they've told me time and time again, Julia, that child was the only light in a dark tunnel. It gave me a reason to feed myself, a reason to work on my trauma, a reason to show up to those counseling meetings that I didn't have the self-motivation to go to. It gave me a reason to live. So to say that ending that life, that could possibly be the answer to a woman getting the professional help that she needs after a sexual assault, is not only an option, but the only option. As Dr. Harrison put forward, a lot of medical professionals will present that as if it's the only option. So it's your job as pro-life students and pro-choice students on your campus to give women the opportunity to make the best, most informed decision. And so I'm so grateful to be a part of this event and to share my story. And if you are there and if you're sitting there and you're thinking, did I go through something similar in high school? Have I repressed some sort of memory? I would encourage you to talk to someone. Talk to the professionals that are there from Marian University, and they are willing and ready, and they are trained and capable to help you walk through those memories and to make sure that you are truly getting the best help possible, because you're worth it. Life is worth it. And I would just want to encourage you to step into the power of sharing that story. I've had the best interactions with people by just taking that first step of vulnerability and sharing the fact that something very awful happened to me many years ago. And so I just want to encourage you to be honest with yourself, have the courage to be honest to those around you, those that are a part of Students for Life and in the pro-life community, and give them an opportunity to show you the care and the love and the compassion that exists in the pro-life viewpoint. Again, my name is Julia, and thank you guys so much for having me, and I'm so excited to answer any questions that you may have at the end of this event. Thank you.
I might have gotten a little bit emotional, but I'm so appreciative that Julia was able to join us and to share her commitment for life and for finding help and for just promoting the power that women have. In addition to our guest speakers this evening, we wanted to talk a little bit about what Marian has to offer for students on our campus who are affected by sexual assault, whether conception has resulted or not. We also want to talk about what our club, Knights for Life, has to offer pregnant or parenting students. So first, we have the counseling department, counseling and consultation services on campus, located in Clare Hall. They offer free confidential counseling for all students and faculty on campus. And if you need someone to talk to and you're scared or nervous, you can absolutely reach out to them, and they're professionally equipped and trained to counsel those on this campus. They're located in Clare Hall, like I said, and they can also be found on Marian University's website. Additionally, we have Marian's Coalition to End Sexual Assault that works specifically to help those who have been, to educate people about sexual assault and to eradicate sexual violence on Marian's campus. Sarah Bolana Moulter, who is here, she's in the back. She is a member of this coalition. And if you are interested in learning more about the Marian Coalition to End Sexual Assault, or if you want to get involved with this coalition, Sarah is totally open to talking to you about that. You can talk to her after the event, or she's also found in Clare Hall at her office. And finally, if you or someone you know is pregnant or a parenting student, we want you to know that Knights for Life is here for you. Our club exists to protect life from the moment of conception, and we want to make sure this campus is a supportive environment for pregnant and parenting students so that they can pursue their dreams and education without while being a mother or a father. So a couple of things that we've done, we have our Pregnant on Campus initiative. Carrie White is our Knights for Life representative for this initiative. So she kind of takes charge of that. But what we do is, you may have seen flyers around campus. There's ways that we can give you resources to local pregnancy centers. And in like Nitro's Pantry, there are diapers and care packages for parents of children on campus. So that is a little bit of what we do. They're located in the health center, and we revamped the lactation rooms on campus so they're more comfortable and accessible for mothers who need to nurse their child in between classes. We raised hundreds of diapers for mothers in need, and we tabled outside of alumni with information on Title IX rights and local pregnancy resource centers. So having said all that, our first local organization that we have invited here tonight is the Hope Center. The Hope Center Indy is home to 3 residential programs that focus on the recovery of women exiting human trafficking, addictions, and other life-dominating issues. These are surrounded by a number of community members, compassion, and spiritual programs and ministries, creating an even bigger impact in our community. The Hope Center specifically deals with women who have experienced sexual violence. Sisters of Survival, SOS, is their recovery program offering housing, food, clothing, life and employment skills, education, and overall well-being support for women survivors of human sex trafficking. They aim to provide women in crisis situations with a safe place to heal and a clear path to community reintegration as empowered individuals. Let us welcome the Hope Center.
Thank you. Is it okay if I take this? Okay. All right. Thanks. Hi, I'm Mary Nolan, and it's good to see all of you guys. I've never been on Marion's University before, so it was fun to drive in and see it. And you may or may not know that Marion University is actually a partner with Hope Center Indy. And so we've been blessed to work with the educational department there to provide educational services on our campus. So what I wanted to share with you guys tonight is, for one, we believe that healing is possible. Healing and building a new life is possible. And we are faith-based, and so we believe that's through faith in Christ, but we are respectful of, wherever the ladies are coming from spiritually, but we are able to provide a safe place for them at our campus to heal and transform. And if you think, man, is it ever really possible to heal and to build a new life after you've been through some really terrible sexual trauma? I have plenty of friends here that I can tell you that, yes, it is possible. It's a lot of work. They have to do the hard work of recovery and healing, but it is possible. And so, my job, I'm the associate director there, and so I oversee a lot of things, and I get to do speaking engagements like this, but I also get to teach a class with our women, and I also get to do a prayer meeting with our women on Wednesday nights, and then just certain field trips and special occasions. And so I'm going to have a table at the end, and I can share some of these resources with you guys. But I just wanted to share with you that we have 5 pillars. We call them our 5 pillars of hope in our SOS program. And so the first one is spiritual. And so this is available for you guys if you want to see it afterwards. But that spiritual aspect is, we realize that women coming in, a lot of them do really hunger for something from God. And so maybe they've been in the most desperate situations of their life, and they've been praying a long time. Or maybe they grew up going to church with grandma, or whatever the case was, and they really are eager to get back into an environment where they can have people around them talking to them about God and praying with them and just helping to uplift their spiritual life. And so that's one of our pillars, is that we definitely believe we want to help them grow in that area. The second area is education and career. And so, as I said, Marion University has been an amazing partner with us for this. About half of the ladies who come into our program don't have a high school education. And so what we get to do is we get to plug them into education right away. And so you guys should be proud of your school. Your school has a grant that pays for 2 people, or sometimes three educators to come in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning to teach our residents math and English and writing, right? And so they prepare to be able to take the GED, which is called TASK now. And so it used to always be called GED, but it's called TASK. And so the residents work really hard during those mornings to be able to get closer and closer to be able to take their task. So there was one lady who, coming in, she could barely read, but she worked with the education department, and she is almost this close to passing the whole GED process. So there's 4 out of 5 sections that she's already passed. So she just has one more section to pass, and then she will receive her diploma. So we get really excited when we see them, be able to have those highlights. And then the career aspect is we do offer internships on our campus. We have 3 businesses on our campus, and then we also have other business partners. So we get to kind of help them find internships and jobs in a safe environment, because a lot of times they might have come from working in the fast food industry or other industries where there might be drugs in that environment. And 90% of the women who come into our program do have a history of addiction. And so a lot of people say, well, why is that the case? Well, for one, sexual trauma can often lead people to turn to drugs if they haven't been able to work through that with a community of support. But 2, if they've been on drugs previously, that makes them vulnerable to trafficking. And so unfortunately, we see that those 2 go hand in hand. And so we really are excited to be able to offer these ladies employment opportunities that are in sober environments and that have really encouraging people around them. And it's also, helping them develop their resume and to build those skills on there. Our third component is wellness. And that wellness aspect includes a lot of things. It includes the recovery piece if they do have that addiction background. And so we get to help them when they are trying to overcome whatever drug that they're overcoming. And we are so excited to celebrate with them when they reach 1 month sober or 3 months sober, 6 months sober. Last week, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, one of our residents reached 18 months sober, and she has never been sober that long before in her life, besides when she was a little kid. But just amazing, and just to see them be so proud of themselves to continue to expand their sobriety, because that's not easy to do. And so we get to connect them with recovery groups and support groups. I'm not sure if anyone's aware of Celebrate Recoveries. There's several in the state of Indiana, and that's open to any adult who is going through any habit, hurt, or hang up. So it can be a drug addiction, but it can also be any type of addiction that you might be struggling with, or some sort of anger management, or whatever it might be. And so we have one that we take the ladies to, and then we also connect them with AA and NA so that they're at least going to 3 recovery meetings a week. And then the wellness also talks about their mental health. And so we want to make sure that we get them into therapy, and we get them into see doctors and help them to grow in their mental health to where they really can feel stronger in their self-esteem. And it also has to do with their physical health. One of the things that we see when ladies come in after having been trafficked for a long time is that they usually need some dental appointments. And so dental health is a big issue that, I don't think it's something we foresaw when we were getting started, but they really do need that dental care when they come in. And so that's something that we're able to help them get as well. And we do have a therapy office on our campus. It's Warnley Youth and Family Therapy. And so they do therapy for the ladies right there. So a lot of them offer EMDR. Has anybody heard of EMDR? Only 1, 2, 3. Okay. Look it up. If you have experience of trauma in your background, look it up. It's EMDR. It stands for Eye Movement Desensitization Reprocessing. Ooh, I got it right, I think. So it is a very helpful technique in therapy to help anyone, whether it's a victim of sexual violence or whether it's just any traumatic event that someone's been through. It helps them to really overcome it and to really close that chapter in their brain. So I really encourage you guys to look that up. So we're happy to be able to offer that to the ladies as well. Our fourth pillar is financial. And so we realize that financial literacy is a really big deal because if you can budget your money and if you can save, then you are less vulnerable to someone trying to traffic you again. And so that's just something that we're trying to empower the ladies to learn that, hey, you can be financially stable and you can be able to take care of yourself and we can help you with those things. Often when the ladies graduate, we have someone who donates cars. And so they are able to get a car, and it's not a brand new car or anything, but it's something that, is good enough for right now until they can afford something else. But that way we're just trying to help them get on their feet and to build credit history and to be able to be financially sustainable. And then the fifth one is relational. And so I actually teach a class with our residents about relationships. And we just talk about, first of all, you have to see yourself as worth something. Or you'll never be able to have someone else give you the respect that you deserve. And like I said, we're faith-based, and so we talk about how God designed us and how God sees us as worth and as so valuable to Him. And when we realize our identity and realize that we are valuable and worthwhile, then it helps us to be stronger in our boundaries with other people and to just be wiser in our relationships. But we also talk about just what it means to look like, to be a good friend and to be a good family member and to be in a network of support. Because a lot of these ladies who have been trafficked for years, they've never really had friends like you might think of. And if they've been living on the street or they've been used to the street lifestyle, then that's such a fast-paced lifestyle and they didn't trust anybody. And so we talk about what it looks like to trust someone who really is trustworthy. And one of the beautiful things that we've seen at the Hope Center, which our Hope Center program is only about 3 years old, so we're still growing and learning a lot of things. But one of the beautiful things that we've seen lately is that a lot of the ladies who have come into our program, they have lost custody of their children when their kids were younger. And now that their kids are a little bit older, once they get into the program and they show that they're doing well, they show that they're sober and that they're able to make good decisions, their kids are excited to reconnect with them. And so that's one piece of the relational aspect that we've been able to talk with them. What does it mean to reconnect with your adult child and to try to have a positive relationship going forward? And so I literally can't tell you how many times that's happened for us. One of our graduates, she graduated over a year ago, and I just saw her post a picture of her and her daughter on the beach in Florida over spring break. And it's just like, that is so incredible because they had been disconnected for over 20 years. And now that she's clean, she's sober, it can have ripple effects on her entire family. And so those are some of the things that we just are excited to go alongside with these women. And, you know, I don't pretend to have all of the answers with any of it. I have a history of depression and just different things that I've overcome, or that I've worked to overcome, right? But, you know, we just get to journey alongside and to encourage them and be that cheerleader to just let them know that they are loved, they are worth it, and that we care about them. And so I know that you guys probably weren't involved in the partnership of Marian University with the Hope Center, but I just want to tell you as a student here, thank you, because it really does mean a lot to us. Not only does Marian University come in the mornings and have classes with our residents who are coming to do their GED, but we also have them do digital literacy classes. So if it's somebody who hasn't been, you know, on a computer in a while, they get to be able to learn computer skills so they can add that to their resume and they can be ready to jump into a marketing job or jump into another office job. So Marian University has paid for some of our people to do that. And then we also have what we call Hope to Rise program in our evenings. And so we have some people from the outside community who get to come into a room and get to take classes to get their GED there. So that's been amazing for us to see that and to see the impact on the people that are in that program right now. If you want to know more information about the Hope Center, I do have flyers I can have up there, and basically we are just trying to come alongside and impart hope and healing to every heart that we can. There is a lot of darkness in the world. There is a lot of heartache in the world. I've been through some heartache myself. My brother died almost 2 years ago, very suddenly, and so in addition to other things, recently I know what it means to just be in the depths of despair because you miss someone so much. And so we have many things that we're just trying to encourage each other to look up and to don't give up on things in life. So I have more information about that. I also wanted to let you know that I have a stack of books, and they are with different things that come from different ways that people can express trauma. So one is cutting. And so this book is from Mercy Ministries. And so this is often what you'll see in someone who has, I'm actually a foster mom. And so I've seen this in the girls and my girls that because of some heartache in their background, they wanted to take out that pain by cutting. And so we do have a book on that, again, this is just a resource from Mercy Ministries, which is out of Tennessee. And then there's one on eating disorders. And then we also have one on sexual abuse. And so if you would like one of these books, like I said, I've got a stack of them and I'm happy to give them all away for free tonight. But I would just encourage you to know that there is hope, and that if you have a friend or someone that you know who's been through something very difficult in one of these areas, let them know there is hope and there is help out there. And so thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you so much. Marian has been really blessed to work with the Hope Center, and we were so grateful to have Mary Nolan here with us tonight. Real fast before we get into our last speaker of the evening, if you remember at the beginning, we talked about those little note cards where you could write a question. Some of the officers are going to come around and slowly start collecting those. So if you could pass them towards the aisles, that would be grand. So the next local organization that we have is the O'Connor House. And our representative from the O'Connor House name is Catherine Shepard. Catherine began working at the O'Connor House in the spring of 2019 and holds the position of Communications and Community Engagement Coordinator. She enjoys sharing the stories of women and the children of the O'Connor House through its social media, newsletters, and website. She also writes grant proposals, onboards new volunteers, and attends outreach events to share the mission of the community. She previously held the position of mentor program manager and life skills coach when she worked with one of the residents, helping them to achieve their goals and take action to achieve those. Catherine loves being a part of an all-female staff that empowers women and serves families in crisis situations, offering hope, healing, and love. She received her BA in Public Relations and Marketing from the University of Dayton and her MS in Health Education from Indiana University, Bloomington. Catherine lives in downtown Indianapolis with her husband, Eric, and their little cat, Little Miss. So please give a warm welcome to Catherine Shepard.
Hi, everybody. So happy to be here tonight. This is also my first time at Marion. I'm not going to lie, I got lost. I got really turned around trying to find this building, but it was a good thing because I got to see how beautiful your campus is. So thank you so much for having me tonight. So I have worked at the O'Connor House for just about 2 years now. And I've worn a lot of different hats while working at the O'Connor House. For anybody who's interested in going into nonprofit work, that's how it goes. You're going to wear a lot of different hats and you're going to kind of dip your toes in all kinds of different areas, which is a good thing. It's fun. So I'm now doing, as Drew mentioned, some communications and some community engagement work, which is why I'm here speaking to all of you tonight. So I know that tonight's theme is about sexual assault and violence, and I'm not going to go too deep into that specifically, but rather just something I want you all to keep in mind, that a lot of the women that we do serve at the O'Connor House, most of them do come from trauma, a lot of it being sexual assault and abuse. So I am going to share a story of one of our residents. Towards the end, I'm not going to go and dive into her trauma and her past, but just something for you to keep in mind, that a lot of the residents that we have, the women that we serve, this is a part of their past. So tonight, I know I just have a few minutes, so I'm just going to chat about what the O'Connor House is, what we do, how we got started, and then I'll finish with that resident story. So in a nutshell, the O'Connor House, which is located up in Carmel, Indiana, we are a Christian home for single, homeless, pregnant women and their children. So our mission is to provide a safe and loving home for women who come from crisis situations. We help them to get on their feet and to give them tools and resources they need to become self-sufficient and to be the best mothers that they can be. So we don't consider ourselves a homeless shelter, but rather a very structured program. Specifically, we have what we call our life skills program, and we require all of our women to find a job. If they don't have their high school education, we do have them go back to school and work on that. So they go to the Excel Center up in Noblesville for that. We make sure that they're getting their prenatal care and that they're hooked up with a primary care doctor. We make sure that they are starting to learn how to budget and manage their finances. A lot of them don't have a driver's license, so if that's something that they're interested in, we can kind of hook them up and get them into driver's ed. And then ultimately, we help them find transitional housing for them and their kids. So we're very holistic in our services, meaning that we really treat mind, body, and spirit. So I'm going to go into that in just a little bit, but I do want to share kind of how we got started because it is a pretty cool history. So I'm just going to recap that really fast. So in 2001, on a trip to celebrate the March for Life, Colleen Dulac of Carmel, Indiana, hears a homily at the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, which impacts her profoundly. Through this homily, she receives a message directly from God that she has to open a home for single, homeless, pregnant women and their children. That's a very specific message that she received from God. Colleen travels back to Carmel, and alongside her friend Chris, they research the needs in Hamilton County and the surrounding area, and they discover that there is an urgent need for housing for women in crisis pregnancies, especially for women who are over the age of 18 and have additional children. So then in 2004, the first board of directors is established. This is all very grassroots, and a temporary home is located to begin the ministry. And we named the home after John Cardinal O'Connor, who was a great defender of life in New York City. And we received a great deal of help from the Good Counsel Homes in New York City, who advised us on many issues surrounding the housing and the care for the women. So our first fundraiser took place at the Ritz Charles in Carmel, and we raised over $60,000, which allowed us to open our first house. And it was a total fixer-upper, and it housed, I think, about 5 women at that time. So then in 2011, we received a grant for $500,000, which allowed us to build a brand new home, which is where we are located today, again, up in Carmel, right off of 146th Street. So this new home that we're in now allows us to house up to 8 women at a time, plus their newborn babies, and any additional children that they may have. So right now we've got 5 moms, 4 newborns. I'm looking at Sarah over here because she's a staff. 4 newborns and like so many toddlers. I can't even keep track, but it's really busy at the O'Connor House, which is a good thing. So lots of people that we're helping out. So that's where we are today. So to date, we've served over 450 women and children, which is super cool. So just some other key components of the program. Residents can come to the O'Connor House from anywhere in Indiana, as well as from out of state. So just last year, we had somebody from New York come to us. So we do take women from all over. They can live at the O'Connor House for up to 18 months. I say that loosely. We're never going to kick somebody out if they still need our services. And I will tell you that usually after about a year living at the O'Connor House, women start to get an itch and they kind of want to get out and get on their own feet. So we say 18 months. It's usually about a year or so that women stay with us. We do have a staff member on duty 24/7. So there's always somebody at the house helping our women out. I already mentioned this, but residents are allowed to bring other children that they have who are under the age of 5 years old. So our goal is to keep families together. We have a whole intake process that occurs prior to a woman being admitted to the O'Connor House. And they have to meet certain criteria. So they do have to be 18, they do have to be pregnant, they have to be clean of hard drugs for 1 year, and they can't be fleeing any serious domestic violence. And that's just to keep everybody safe. We offer Bible study every Monday night, which is optional for our women. We have community night on Tuesdays, which is going on right now over at the O'Connor House. So our community nights, that is where our moms take shifts or take turns each week, and they'll cook a meal for the rest of the moms. And they'll share the meal together. And then following that, we'll have a volunteer come in and they'll do some kind of life skills class of some sort or a workshop. And from everything from budgeting, finances, prenatal care and parenting, hygiene, I mean, every topic under the sun, you name it. So we have that every Tuesday night. And then we also do group therapy every Wednesday night. I know because of COVID, we've kind of put that on hold. I think we're getting back to that this summer though. So we keep the women very, very busy and they're very, very productive throughout the week. And then some other things that we offer too, we have so many donations. People are so generous to the organization. So the women always have access to clothes, toys, books for the kids. We do have a community fridge. They always have groceries. Now they are on food stamps and for the most part are responsible for doing their own cooking and cooking for their kids and all of that. But we always will keep them covered if you know, they need some extra help. We have a huge backyard and basement for the kids to play in. So it's a really, really beautiful home. If any of you ever have the chance to come and see it and do a tour, you really should. It's really pretty cool. It is important to know that at the O'Connor House, we can't fix anyone who comes. So as much as we want to, we always want women after they leave and transition from the O'Connor House, we always just want to see them be successful and just have it all be uphill. Unfortunately, that's not usually the case. The women that we serve, most of them do come from generational poverty. And for most of them, breaking out of the cycle is a lifelong journey for them. So what we do is we meet them where they're at. We provide a loving and safe home. We help them to raise their babies during that critical first year of their life. And we provide them with as much resources and tools to be sufficient before they transition out. So we always want our women to choose life for their baby, and we hope that our services make that decision possible for them. So I am just going to share a quick story of one of our current moms right now. I'm sorry, I'll be quick. Her name is Azaria. And in 2018, Azaria, so a mother of 2 young children at the time, found herself facing many challenges. She was caring for her 2-year-old daughter, Kennedy, alone, while her 7-year-old son was living with his father in Indianapolis. Lacking a support system and unable to keep up with her finances, Azaria and Kennedy became homeless. While trying to keep her head above water and to care for her daughter, Azaria received the news that she was pregnant with her 3rd child. In August of 2019, Azaria gave birth to another son, Zion. She was able to move in with her grandmother who could help care for her 2 children. However, the situation quickly proved to be too stressful for the grandmother, and Azaria was asked to move out, and she once again found herself homeless with her toddler and her newborn. She had no option other to jump from home to home and couch to couch. So basically she was just couch surfing, staying with whoever would allow them to stay with them. Life only continued to become more challenging for Azaria. Not only was she diagnosed with diabetes, but right around the same time, she received the news that she was once again pregnant with her 4th child. And at this time, she had exhausted all of her housing resources. She was experiencing health issues that led to several hospital visits, and she had no one to help care for her children. She spiraled into a deep depression and felt completely hopeless. So Azaria turned to Safe Families, which is a volunteer-driven organization that temporarily places children in crisis situations in a safe and loving home. In September 2020, Kennedy and Zion moved in with another family until Azaria was able to gain stability. So the O'Connor House has a partnership with Safe Families, and it's because of that partnership that Azaria was able to find us and to use and utilize our services. So she moved into our home just this past October. And then in November, she delivered a baby, a beautiful baby girl, Lanaya. So today, Azaria, Kennedy, Zion, and Lanaya all live at the O'Connor House. And her older son, Dwayne, also gets to come for visits regularly. So Azaria shared that before coming to the O'Connor House, she felt like she was failing at doing the only thing that mattered to her, which was being a mom. But she's been given so much peace since finding us. She said she feels so blessed to wake up in her own bedroom in a home where she is able to work on a plan for herself and her children's future. And she is truly an amazing mom, and she is just a delight at the O'Connor House. And she's an incredible example to our other residents of what it means to be a patient, loving, attentive mother. So we're really excited to see what life has in store for her and for her kids. So thank you so much for giving me the time to speak to all of you tonight. Again, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
We just want to thank our incredible speakers once again. Can we have another round of applause, please? So right now we're going to go into our Q&A session, our discussion panel. So if our speakers could come down to the front for this, thank you. So we collected some of the note card questions that we asked you to write down. We're going to start out with a couple of those questions, but then you guys can chime in with your own questions for our great speakers. I'm going to start out with this question for Dr. Donna. It says, Dr. Donna, you spoke about how doctors assuming rape victims want an abortion is making a decision for them, which continues to make them powerless. The question is, what would you say to someone who would argue that making abortion illegal also takes away a choice?
Yes, making abortion illegal takes away a choice. I would agree with that. The question is, I mean, is that, it's kind of an obvious thing, so they must be asking something else.
Oh, it just says, how would you argue with someone who would argue that saying that making abortion illegal would also take away that choice from a mother?
It would take away that choice from a mother. It's true. And I mean, you have the issue of what it means for the child as well. So in the issue of pregnancy, you've got pregnancy after rape, you've got 2 victims. You've got the victim survivor, the mother, and you've also got the victim survivor, the child, who's not a rapist. That child is the child of the mother and the child of the father who raped that woman. So do we use capital punishment for the child of someone who's committed a horrific crime? And that's, I think, something that we have to wrestle with is allowing the child to be killed the right solution for both the mother and the child? And I'd say it's a question we need to talk about.
Thank you. This question is for the Hope Center. It says, do the people you help stay there 24/7? And if so, how long do they usually stay there?
Yes, when they are in the first few phases, they do stay there 24/7 in the sense that they live there. So it is a residential program. Now, obviously, they have appointments that are at a doctor's office or a dental office. They go to church, they go to outside meetings. Often they'll go out to eat with a mentor or something. So those kind of things happen, but they do live there. Now, once they get into the later phases, they're allowed to go off campus like for the weekend. And we also have a transitional program, which is for any of the ladies who graduate our SOS program, which is 15 months long. So I'm sorry, I didn't say that earlier, but it is free for the ladies, and they can be there for 15 months if they so choose. And then if they want to stay on campus with that support and in a sober living environment that has some accountability, then they're able to come into our Hope Community program, which they can stay in there for up to 2 years or so. And in the Hope Community, they do pay a little bit of rent, but they have their own bedroom and their own bathroom, and paying rent helps them to stick to their budget and also develop credit history and rent history, which is important then for them when they go outside. So if they want to stay for all of that, then they could be there for over 3 years. But rarely do they stay quite that long, but a few do.
Thank you. I think any of you could answer this question, but Julia, you might be a great person to answer this question. The question is, how can we be respectful, empowering, and non-assuming in conversations that we encounter with survivors?
What I instruct my students to do was modeled very well by Dr. Harrison in establishing compassion first. So if you happen to know that you're speaking to someone who has survived sexual assault and they've opened up to you about that, of course, your heart should melt a bit, and you should lower your temperament, lower the speed at which you're talking, meet them with direct eye contact, a touch on the shoulder if that's appropriate for them. If it's a close friend, offering them, do you need a hug? Thank you so much for opening up to me about this. I'm so encouraged that you feel comfortable around me to share this with me. Is there anything I can do to help you on your healing journey? And to just meet them with compassion first, and to say what happened to you was awful. And it's my duty as a human being to make sure that as little people have this in common with you as possible. So I would love to walk alongside you in any way, and just to continue to reiterate that compassion that, especially if they're your friend, they already know exists, but to hear it from multiple different angles and reiterated throughout your friendship is very important, a reminder for them, and to invite them into a space of safety and to thank them for the emotional hardship that it is to be that vulnerable with someone new or someone that they haven't reached that level of vulnerability with before. So I would say compassion first, always, when you're approaching the rape topic, sexual assault, and also make sure that you're not assuming just because you're speaking to a male that he hasn't experienced sexual trauma in his past as well.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do one more note card question, and then we'll open it up to all of you. This question says, why is there only little research on issues related to rape-related pregnancy?
That is a terrific question. I wish I knew. I think it's an incredibly important topic. Research gets done when it's funded, so you have to have some funder who's interested in the answer to it. And I think it's a wonderful thing for psychiatry, psychology departments to start looking into, because it's a way understudied subject, in my opinion.
Thank you. So now we want to open up to all of you guys. If you want to use your mics on your table and ask any questions you have for any of our speakers, you can raise your hand or just start talking.
Okay, yeah, this is working. So this is kind of for Dr. Harrison. So given that we're not making much ground, I should say progress in the area of research for abortions, or, just that general area, it's going to be kind of hard to pass any sort of, or I view it as kind of hard to pass legislation and reversing a lot of the laws that are in place today. So given our current circumstances and how dangerous abortions can be and the side effects from the procedures and things like that, my question is, has there been any research in how we can make it safer for women?
So how we can make abortion safer for women? Boy, that's a little bit of a difficult question to answer, because there is the assumption that abortion is the safest sliced bread. So why would you study something that is obviously has no complications and no deaths and no other things? So there isn't an assumption from the pro-abortion side that abortion has any complications. The other difficulty in abortion research is that, unlike live birth mortality, which is recorded in hospitals, when a woman dies with a live birth, everybody knows about it, including the malpractice insurance plaintiffs' lawyers. But abortion mortality and abortion morbidity, there's no systematic collection of complications. So nobody's tracking, nobody's looking, it's not funded. So it's difficult to get much interest in research when people deny that there's a problem. And there is a problem. I mean, if you ask women who've had abortions, they know that there's a problem, and the psychological research that has been done, that clearly demonstrates you've got an increase in adverse mental health outcomes. The research that's been done on preterm birth, I mean, it's pretty solid, because you have a problem recognized, i.e. a preterm birth. You go back in the history and you say, those who have had abortions have an increased risk. So you have to have a recognized problem to generate some interest in doing research for it. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Yeah, I guess I kind of asked it wrong, but just given that it's pretty obvious that the current mechanisms at which abortions are being done are unsafe, has there been any efforts to kind of make it safer?
Well, okay, there's surgical abortion, there's medical abortion, drug-induced abortion. Surgical abortion, it kind of is what it is. You have to open the cervix in order to empty the contents. You do have to scrape out the contents, which involves the possibility of perforation. I mean, it's hard to imagine how you could make that safer than what it is. And I would never call an abortion safe. I would say less risky than it is. With chemical abortion, with drug-induced abortion, with mifeprexin, misoprostol, the jury is out as to how safe or unsafe that is. What I would say is there's a large number of adverse events that arise from that, including hemorrhage and tissue left inside. The reason that's an issue is that part of the mechanism for preterm birth and subsequent pregnancy is chronic infection. And when you have tissue left inside, you get the issues of chronic infection. It'll be another 20 years before anybody looks at medical abortion and whether or not it increases the risk of preterm birth. There have been a couple studies that suggest that maybe medical abortion itself might not. The only problem is when you got 1 out of 5 of them or higher who have to have a D&C afterward to remove tissue, you got the same issues of perforation. And so it kind of is what it is. I can't imagine that there would be a way to make it safer, you know, because you have to evacuate the contents of the uterus.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have a question for our speakers? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, this question is for Dr. Donna as well. Is there similarly lacking research in the mental health outcomes for women who have experienced miscarriage or stillbirth or have chosen to carry to term pregnancies with adverse pregnancy diagnoses? Or is this a specific to abortion?
It's not specific to abortion. There is a abysmal lack of interest and funding and understanding of how reproductive outcomes for women affect women altogether. It's abysmal, and I don't know why there isn't more interest other than, like I said, you have to have funding to get research done. So I think if anybody feels that bug to do research, it's a wonderful topic. It would really help us.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Ms. Hadley.
So something that I've been wondering is the Hyde Amendment, which is obviously really controversial right now, also blocks any government or objective data or tracking that might help research initiatives. So in many ways, does repealing the Hyde Amendment possibly increase the ability to research these issues?
So did you say, does the repeal of the Hyde Amendment?
Yes, because the Hyde Amendment also, from what I understand, blocks any funding or tracking of this information that might be done in public hospitals.
I've never heard that the Hyde Amendment blocks tracking or funding. Hyde Amendment, what it does is it prevents taxpayer funding from going to those organizations which provide abortion. So that's what the Hyde Amendment is, but there isn't any, well, there's no tracking right now of abortion complications. Anything that you see in the CDC is all voluntary reporting by abortionists to the CDC. So there's no systematic tracking right now at all. And that's whether the Hyde Amendment is in place or not. Now, the Hyde Amendment just prevents us from who don't want our money going to abortion to pay for abortion.
Let's do one more question. Yeah.
What's a great question. Turns out 75 to 85% of OBGYNs do not perform abortions in their practice. So the vast majority of OB-GYNs don't perform abortions. And why is that? It's really tough to go from the room with Jane Smith and say, Jane, congratulations, here's your baby, 12 weeks, waving to you, and go in to Jane Doe's room and say, Jane, okay, you want to remove this blob of tissue? We'll remove the blob of tissue. It's an issue of almost cognitive dissonance. Okay, so most OB-GYNs vote with their scalpel, and most OB-GYNs don't do abortions. Now, to be vocally pro-life, it's difficult to be vocally pro-life anywhere because the pro-life movement has been so radically misunderstood. I mean, the Hippocratic Oath, which we all used to take as physicians, stopped being offered in many places in the 1980s. The Hippocratic Oath says explicitly, I will not perform euthanasia, nor will I suggest such a course. Neither will I perform abortion. Okay, that's an oath that a physician takes, so it's intrinsic to medicine that we don't use death as a therapeutic option. Okay, and that's sort of intuitively obvious that physicians wouldn't be participating in something that causes the death of their patient. But yes, publicly, there's a lot of pressure on OB-GYNs to not say the obvious and to advocate for abortion. though with their scalpel, they don't do that.
Let's give another round of applause for our speakers.
All right. I bet everybody's hungry. So I just want to say from the bottom of our heart, from Knights for Life, from Catholic Medical Association, thank you to everyone who came out. Let's give our speakers one more round of applause. They did a phenomenal job. I do want to make two quick announcements. The first is if you had any question or if your question was not fully answered and you would like to speak more, you are welcome to come down. I'm sure the speakers would love to answer your questions as well as myself. I also serve as the intern for Indianapolis for Students for Life of America, so I would love to talk about the nature of a safe abortion or any other question, as well as our Knights for Life officers. On your way out, make sure you take your pamphlet, drop your note card at the back if you didn't use it, and pick up a Chick-fil-A sandwich. And let's thank Dr. Hollowell for those sandwiches. Please give him a round of applause. A very generous donation. Again, we would love to speak with you about your questions. Stay after if you'd like. Have a good night.